Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I just want to say on behalf of the Victorian team at the Institute of Architects, I'd like to offer you a warm welcome to today's Lean In, where we will be looking at 4 major challenges facing architecture firms and how to solve them. My name is Renette Roux, and I'm the Industry Engagement Lead here at the Institute in Melbourne. And it's my honour to be your host and moderator for today's Lean In session. We're joined by members across the country today, and we acknowledge with deep respect the traditional owners of this land. We acknowledge that it is a privilege to stand on country and walk in the footsteps of those before us, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Today's Lean In session is being recorded, so if you miss anything or have to leave early, it will be published on the Institute's YouTube channel in the next couple of days, to which you will receive a link via our upcoming email communications. This Lean In session enables you to ask questions to our panelists. So if you have a question or comment, please use our Q&A box down below to add it in and I'll go through these with the panelists later on in this session. Today's session features Julian Connolly, the account executive for Total Synergy. As account executive, Julian works with the architecture businesses across Australia and New Zealand to help them overcome the day-to-day challenges they face and help them run their operations and deliver their projects more efficiently and profitably. We will also welcome Ray Brown, the Chief Mentor at Archibiz. Ray is a co-founder and Chief Mentor of Archibiz, a business education and support company for architecture firms globally. Ray's passion is helping business owners to realize their personal potential and that of their organization. I'm particularly interested in today's session, having used Total Synergy previously and knowing just how much easier it makes managing a project right through from the initial project plan and resourcing to invoicing and contacting clients. Julian and Ray, welcome to our Lean In, and it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Renette. Thank you, and welcome to everybody on the call. Well, there's certainly no shortage of challenges in architecture at the moment, whether that be cost escalation, projects going on hold, a general lack of work around in the marketplace. I feel things just feel quite tight. But what we've got to say is everybody in the market faces the same challenges. Okay? And the thing that you can control is the practice that you run and how you run that practice. The session today, we'll be speaking about these 4 strategic areas that we feel that practices can work on. The practice itself, the projects you run, and the people you have in your practice, and a little bit about how you think within your practice. And we often hear that people say, well, I just need more work. I need more clients. And quite often, if you put more clients into an organization that's not been particularly well run, or it could be run better, then that's not going to solve the problems. And we would encourage you to have what we'd call a profit improvement mindset. Okay? Profit improvement projects can happen in all of these areas, all of these strategic areas. And hopefully we'll give you a few ideas today in how to approach some of that. So if we start with the practice as a whole, practice as a whole as a business, the challenge here is to create a sustainable and profitable business. And I can tell you that there are many practices out there who are making the 15 to 20% profit on the bottom line after they pay a reasonable salary to the owners. We often get a bit of confusion about what is profit. And I know in an architectural practice saying, well, the profit includes my return. If you're running a successful business, you need to differentiate between the two. You should be paid a proper salary and the business should be making a profit. So the opportunities within the practice itself really starts with better processes and systems. How are your processes and systems? What is best practice within your architectural practice? Are there people in one area of the business doing things differently to another area? What's the way that we should be doing it to get the best outcomes that we want from the practice? So starting better processes and systems, having a mindset that we really need to keep an eye on that. And we need to be looking constantly for opportunities to improve our systems and processes. Second area, leveraging software. Most practices have software in their practice, but quite often they're not using that software properly, or they're only using the part that they've figured out along the way. So the encouragement here is to really look at the software that you've got in the practice and see where you can develop the use of that, get full benefit from the software, and get the return that you really want from the investment that you're making in the software. And the last one, timely and accurate reporting. Okay, so this is often seen as a chore in an architectural practice, whether that be timesheets or weekly reporting. But what we're looking for here is what we call actionable insight. So what can we get from the information that's being provided to allow us to do a better and more efficient job in the future? Okay. Reporting in itself is not delivering any value, but reporting that gives that insight and allows you to change behaviour, that makes a difference. Julian?
Yeah, I mean, one of the more common issues we're talking to prospective clients and our clients about is the ability to get actionable insights live. And the most common situation is that reports are, bridging a gap with Excel or from a system that isn't live and looking a week to a month in arrears. And it's really just not possible to sort of mitigate any loss on a project or really take any sort of effective measure of intervening on a project when you're looking so far in the past. So the timeliness of reporting and those insights is just, crucial, absolutely crucial.
Okay. And that takes us on to projects. And the challenge here is to manage projects in an effective manner. Kind of stating the obvious, but there are so many opportunities in managing projects. I had one client who said to me, you win a job, and then it's like doing a 5,000-piece jigsaw over 2 years. Just do the best we can, and we'll work our way through it. There's got to be a better way of doing that. And if we look at project management, the business model in architecture, whether we like it or not, is turning hours into money efficiently. Okay, of course, we produce fantastic buildings and we make a hopefully good impact on the built environment. But as a business, we turn hours into money. And one of the key things that we find in practices is that they think of the hours in two categories: project hours, non-project hours. And we feel it's really important to differentiate your project hours between billable project hours and non-billable project hours. So if you've got a budget and a fee that covers 20 hours and you spend 30 hours on the job, that 10 hours extra is actually like a gift to the client. Okay? And that is the area that we really need to try and control and control the margins that we're getting from those projects. Second is better project accounting. So do we know those numbers? Are we getting those numbers in real time? Are we doing historical analysis of project, or do we know as we go along where we need to be with those projects? You need visibility, and you need an early warning system that says, this project is going off track. We need to be doing something here to pull it in line. And this is where the accounting, where we protect our margins. So the margin for us at Archibus is very much just the difference between the actual cost of doing a job and the fee that we get. So it's a bit like being in retail. You buy something for $10 and you sell it for 20, the margin is $10. So it's really important that you understand how much margin there is in each job. And you can manage projects in all sorts of different ways from an accounting perspective. But our encouragement is to really understand how much contribution and margin each project is making. And then better collaboration. So lots of people involved in a project, whether that be builders or consultants or engineers, there's always a better way to collaborate on these projects. Look at what's working. Where are your best relationships? Why are those relationships better than others? And improve that as you go along is bound to have an impact on the profitability of the projects along the way. Julian?
Yeah, the first point you mentioned there around better project management is probably the one that we deal with most commonly. And the cruel irony we see, I guess, for architects is sort of the more senior and better they get, the less time they spend doing architecture and the more time they spend managing projects. And often there's very little training, and more specifically, there's no tools, or there is a tool that doesn't work or isn't used effectively. So, really, I mean, some of those unbillable hours you mentioned could be really well used doing some training in managing jobs, as a generic sort of discipline in project management. And I think that's something that Synergy helps with. It's also something that companies like Archiviz can assist with, and there are other offerings out there that can really assist project leaders get a better understanding of the business of managing a project.
Yep, thank you. And then our third P is people. So we can be running a really good practice and our projects can be run well, but if the people are not being properly utilised, the challenge here is to manage the resources in an effective manner. And the first one is better utilisation. So architectural practices are quite often driven by two things: the deadlines and the jobs and the client shouting for what they want next. You need to look after the business as well. You need to look after the utilisation of the people. Is there someone sitting in the corner who's really busy, but not really producing much value? And the concept of being busy, every architectural practice appears to be busy, but that doesn't mean to say it's effective. Are we producing the real value that we need to get the practice profitable and sustainable? And that leads to capacity. So what is the capacity of an architectural practice? So you've a utilisation percentage, you've got available hours, you've got a market rate that someone should be able to achieve for selling those hours. And if you extend that out for everyone, ideally over an hour, over a week, then you've got a number of a value that practice should be able to create. And what we find is that number is very different to what the actual billings are. And the practices tend to get locked into 100,000 a month or 50,000 a month or whatever the number is on a monthly basis. That's our normal. I think you'll find that the capacity is much, much higher than that. And the difference between the capacity and the actual billing is down to one thing. It's inefficiency. Inefficiency of process, inefficiency of training, inefficiency of work allocation within the practice. So these are all things that can assist. And then we come to better collaboration across teams. And that what we find is that different processes operating in different silos within architectural practices. One really efficient team and one less efficient team. And yet there's no collaboration about what makes the difference. What is one team doing that the other is not? And we would encourage that collaboration across teams and just to analyse what's working, what's not working. Julian?
Yeah, I think this ties directly into obviously the resourcing sort of side of platforms like Synergy. Obviously resourcing to capacity and maximising, how close you can get to that ceiling that you have on revenue as a professional services firm is very important. But we understand that there's a significant other, amount of other variables, which is, managing to maximum revenue, but also, it could be blooding graduates on certain jobs and sort of harvesting people as to, we've got one expert in a certain discipline. If that person's no longer here, we don't really have, the architects coming up that sort of take that place. And there's so many different variables that, directors have to really consider when allocating staff. So getting a really good picture of visibility of who is capable of what and who's available to do it, is very important.
Yep. And that brings us to our last P, perception. So we had 3 Ps and we wanted to speak about thinking, and one of our clients said, I think what you're speaking about here is perception. So the challenge is to differentiate your practice from others operating in the same market. One of the biggest criticisms that we've got of architectural practices, and none of us in Archiviz are actually architects, so we can stand on the outside and look in, is letting the work do the talking for you. Okay. Most architectural practice websites, they're actually full of pictures of buildings. Okay, and that's fine if someone comes along and says, I want a building that looks like that, I think I'll go to this firm. But there's much more to a business than that. There's much more opportunities to differentiate. And the example we use is like the BMW dealership. There's 10 in Melbourne and probably, I think there's 23 in London. Okay, these dealerships are all selling the exact same product. So what do they do to differentiate? They've got better showrooms. They've got better websites, better training, better reception when you turn up on the spot, better coffee that they supply you. So what are the ways that you can look to differentiate your business and stand out from the crowd beyond just the work that you've done and your portfolio of work, which will always be your credibility and something that you can rely on. There's so much more that you can build on top of that. The first thing is really building a differentiated story. So what is the story of your practice? When I turn up on your website, what do I see and hear about the people, and not necessarily the history of the practice, but just the smiling faces. You want people to turn up on your website and feel at home. They want to say, this is the kind of business I want to work with. Seems like nice people. Yes, I like their buildings, but there's much more to the story than that. And get some smiling. One of the criticisms we've got is not enough people on the website. Sometimes even the practice leader is not featured on the website. Use video, use smiling faces, get that human touch into your marketing so that people can resonate with that. And that brings us to understanding your prospect. So you may have come across the concept of personas or avatars, and that's really understanding. People buy from people. It's understanding who are these people you're trying to attract. What are their likes and dislikes? What are their values? What do they resonate with? And I think even people say to us, well, but we do a lot of tender work, and you're speaking more residential. Well, I think even in tender work, there will come a time where a relationship will count, where someone is looking to impress their boss or make a choice between two architects. And it'll come down to, who do I feel most comfortable with? And then lastly, we've got better marketing processes. There's always a better way to handle your marketing, what's working, what's not working. And what we find in a lot of architecture practice is that the basic process can be a little bit flawed. Okay? So what happens is the client turns up and there's a very in-depth briefing process about the project, what it's going to look like when it's finished, what the wants and needs of the client are, and then a bit of time spent on preparing a proposal. Okay, so that proposal can take 1 to 2 days, collecting reference pictures, all the things that you put into that proposal. And then what happens? The proposal is emailed to the client. Okay, and in doing that, you've lost complete control of the sales process. Whether you like it or not, you are in sales. Okay, and getting people in for that second meeting where you can really present and see what resonates in the proposal, see where the objections come from. Rather than emailing the proposal, someone will go straight to the back and look at the price, and you may be out of the running without any opportunity to present or to explain. So the key thing here is to really understand the client. Really make it, so most practices will say to us, we just need more clients, or our marketing needs to be better to find more clients. Okay, the clients are out there. Architects are not closing down left, right, and centre. And architects tell us two things: we need more work, and we can't find good people. And those two things can't really live comfortably together. There's something not quite right in there. Okay, so the key in your marketing is to make it more easy for the right clients to find you. Okay, just make it easy for those clients to find you. Are you in the top 3 of the people who are right now thinking about using a service that you could provide? Okay, if not, then you need to build the awareness. Okay, building awareness is really going to compensate. If we finish up with this, it's going to compensate a lot more than anything that's happening in the market. If twice as many people know about you, who you are, and resonate with your message, then you're going to get more business. So we would encourage you to look at this holistically across your practice, the practice itself, the projects and how you run them, the people, and then the perception, internal and external perception of your practice. Who are you and what's your story? Julian?
Yeah, look, I agree with everything totally that you've said there, Ray. I think a lot of the people in this session probably feel that this force acutely every day, but in an industry where the margins are so thin and people are so sort of commercially competitive, you have to do everything you possibly can not to let them commodify you.
Yeah.
And that will. So
great. Renette, I'll maybe hand back to you for the questions, if we've had any.
Yes, so that I will just say that thank you for everyone for joining us and for that great presentation. The Q&A is now open to the audience. If you had any questions about what Ray has spoken about today, as well as about total synergy, I think and I might start it off and ask a question to you, Julian, about or sort of pose a conversation topic about total synergy, because I think one of the really big benefits outside of streamlining the project management process in architectural practices is you're providing a platform that all of your employees have access to, and there's an opportunity for young, sort of whether it be a graduate or a young architect trying to really step into a leadership position, for a young architect to have access to, seeing how the resourcing is happening, invoicing, seeing how the project timeline is looking, and how that whole side of running the business works, which I think, creates an opportunity for employee growth and also retention, which, I believe is something that's becoming increasingly concerning. I thought maybe if you wanted to weigh in a bit more about some of the features, the additional features in Total Synergy that support that kind of access to all employees and like.
Yeah, I suppose people can get stuck in the idea of systems just purely being something they throw a timesheet in, at the end of the week. If you're lucky, at the end of the week, it might be every 2 weeks or whatever, whenever they might feel like it. But really, what a platform like Synergy does is it's specifically designed for architecture firms. So allowing people to touch on things like resourcing and get a handle of that early on in their career, I think could really differentiate them in the market, as well as getting sort of from a career progression perspective. If you can use a tool like Synergy to get a better understanding of how a project is actually managed, what it costs, what are the ramifications for, resourcing and putting more expensive people on versus, cheaper, more heavily sort of utilized people and that sort of thing. I think I certainly agree that it could serve sort of as a really good differentiator for you in a career market. And obviously each business has its own sort of culture. But we do find that the more that, the financial information, it doesn't have to be all the way down to what other people are being paid, but the more sort of access people have to how the job is actually performing and the commercial ramifications for that, the more people will sort of, direct their efforts to that end. So I think there's a lot of benefit in people becoming sort of aware of that early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we've got a few questions that sort of flow back into that. And I might group some of them together. One question being, how does Synergy solve these problems? Like overview of costs, managing project deliverables, checking cash flow, and does it allow you? Yeah, I'll start with that one and then we can flow on to the next.
I think over the years, Synergy's gone through quite a few evolutions. And at this point, really one of the best things about Synergy is trying to, when you first create a project, leverage some of the repeatability around a project. It might be the scope of the work you deliver at a generic level, the types of people you might use on a job, the type of work you might deliver on a job, to mitigate a lot of the data entry in those processes. If you create an opportunity or something like that and you have a very rough idea of fee, you can leverage a lot of sort of pre-saved data to speed up the budget creation, the project planning, and that sort of thing. So I think that's one of the ways that Synergy really approaches it, knowing that it's garbage in, garbage out. And one of the things that people don't want to be doing, referring back to Ray's sort of unbillable hours, is spending those unbillable hours doing the administration on a project or the work they're doing. So I think in general, that's the approach that Synergy takes, is trying to expedite that process.
Brilliant. I might actually throw to you, Ray. We've got a question about the importance of having the whole team engaged with the performance of projects and understanding their efficiency.
Yep, I think that's So there's secrecy at one end and complete transparency at the other end of the spectrum. And as business owners, we tend to have a little bit of that secrecy mentality. We can't share that, and that wouldn't be good for everyone to know. And typically that fear is unfounded. People want to work for successful businesses that make a profit, and that provides them job security and job satisfaction. So my encouragement to every business owner is share the knowledge. So people may have ideas, they may have good quality questions to ask if they've got the data, but if they don't have the data, they haven't got the visibility to even be involved in that. And the question really is, what's the fear around why would you not share information? Is there something, something going on that you want to hide? Because that's the implication. If the information, particularly financial information, is not being shared in the business, then the question is why.
Absolutely, transparency is key, I always think. Another question for you, Julian, regarding synergy. There was a question around how clean and easy the interface is, and whether it allows you to see across projects on a high level overview. Not just a whole lot of leaves, but a tree.
Yeah, look, obviously different levels of the organisation want to see different information. So at a granular level, people putting in timesheets on a stage, on a project, it does all filter up to a global view of what's going on across the organisation. And obviously the larger the organisation gets, the more important that is. You might have, dozens of jobs on the fly across multiple teams, across multiple disciplines, across multiple geographies. So it really depends. Synergy looks a lot different depending on sort of what you're trying to do with it and what your role is within an organisation. To a lot of people, it's, I issue documents from there, I put my timesheets in. And obviously to people overseeing the business, generally it's a high level view of what everyone is doing at any point in time and how that's going to potentially affect our revenue and ultimately our profitability. So a lot of different approaches are catered for.
Yeah, and I can speak from someone who's actually used it before, and in terms of a clean interface, it really is very easy to use, and it's not something that's clunky. Ray, I have a few questions around, and I might group these together, where you see firms overcomplicating things, and whether you think that bigger firms have a better system than smaller firms. What is the one thing that any firm should start with to create a good system?
Oof, big question. I would have to say most of our experience has been small to medium-sized practice. So I think some of the big practices they've got more people, they've got more admin, more management. I think in terms of the smaller practice, it's really the lack of systems. It's the lack of using something like total synergy to give transparency. The 5,000 piece jigsaw is a very good analogy of how people find how they operate their practice. And they also think, as I said earlier, that more business will solve all the problems when sometimes it just exacerbates the problems. So the key is to break down simple systems, what's working, get the reporting to the point where you have real time. Your reporting is your scorecard. Okay, so you take initiatives, you make changes, and then you find out if that's making things better or worse. Without decent reporting and decent transparency around the numbers, then it's kind of wishful thinking. Let's try and improve things generally. It's going to be a bit more scientific than that. And I think the idea, as I spoke earlier on about like profit improvement projects, so what are you actually doing to focus on? You might have 2 or 3 people working on a project with a timeline and some actions. Yes, it may not produce any significant results, but on the other hand, it might just uncover something that gives you a 2 or 3% improvement on your performance. And that across the board on all your projects can make a massive difference.
Brilliant. There was a question around, and this can go to both of you, if there are any rules of thumb around the percentage of time that should go into each category of project management, whether it be marketing, design, client communications.
think
Oh,
that's I'll have a go. But I think the answer to that is no. I think it's certainly in the practices that we deal with and the size that we deal with, there's not dedicated people to marketing and not dedicated people to software management, for instance. So, but it is important that you do get job descriptions right in a way that people know what they're supposed to be doing. And more importantly, I think sometimes knowing how much of things they're supposed to be doing. So if you spend half your week on something that should only take half a day, then that's not going to be productive. So it's important to look at the resources and say, how do we apportion them across the week? How do we apportion someone's time? And then how do we measure against what they actually do versus what the vision of the job was? And the closer we can get to that, the better understanding we have.
Yeah, and I think that sort of links to another question that goes out to both Archibiz and Synergy about whether you have an approach or system to estimating the time required for an architectural service to establish the fee. Is there something in Synergy that sort of supports that, or yeah?
We definitely have the tools for building a budget and resourcing staff and scenario planning that across time. If the burden of this work across these 3 people over this next 10 weeks were to all of a sudden, we had an extra 2 weeks to do it, then, what would the effect be? And that never happens. The reality is what happens if we have 2 less weeks to do it. So that side of it, yes, it's one of those components, though, obviously, that it's easy for people like me to sit here and say Synergy will do everything. We certainly can give you the tools to help you. We can give you the data to make those decisions. And we can also give you the historical data of how you've performed, in jobs like that with that client, with, that sort of thing, which can be beneficial in coming up with fees. But there's definitely a lot still in between the ears of experienced architects as to, getting to a definitive cost of what it would take you. And yeah, any data to back that up, we can certainly provide. But I think that's some of the magic that architects and senior architects in particular who are managing teams really develop over their careers. So
yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's almost the most important thing from today's session is calculating the actual cost of a job based on experience, software, whatever it may be. So step 1 is how many hours, step 2 is what's the cost. Then you can go and negotiate your price with the client, and the margin is the difference between your actual cost and the selling price that you negotiate. I think architects, in my experience, overcomplicate that process and muddy the water in terms of the difference between selling price and cost price. And I think there's huge opportunities in there to simplify and understand their business better. Someone said to me yesterday that what they find with architects is there's decades of conditioning. Okay? And I think to break through that decades of conditioning, it's our job at Archibiz, coming from the outside and not being architects. We can ask the awkward questions and we can question systems and based on good business principles, not beyond that. We're not trying to be clever, trying to keep things simple and get the visibility and transparency that people need to run successful businesses.
Yeah, and I think touching on access to people with that high level of experience and years behind them, there is a question about how, everyone is very busy, especially senior management. How do you find time to work on the business and address these things that have been discussed today? And I think, I guess that also does tie into using platforms like Synergy.
Yeah, I mean, the cruel part of it is generally you do less architecture, really. And, there is a school of thought out there that probably follows logically as you sort of get more senior and senior that you should really be doing less and giving it to other people and focusing more of your time on the administration of the business. Exactly what those proportions are and how much should be spent would vary organisation to organisation and the size of the organisation. So yeah, I don't know if we have a specific rule for it, but I would say it's generally as time goes by and the more sort of experience you get, cruelly, you should probably be doing more of that than anything else.
Yeah, we speak a lot about what we call the transformation from technician to leader, and I think that is massive. That shifting from being an architect and doing the work and being knowledgeable after years and years of experience, and then suddenly you find yourself in a leadership position. That change needs to be acknowledged. That change in thinking needs to be acknowledged. There needs to be skills acquired and just a different approach to how you do the job. You don't have to do that exclusively, but you need to understand when you're wearing the technician hat and when you're wearing the leader or business owner hat. And I think we find that that makes a huge difference, that insight for people in exploring what being a leader actually means and understanding business principles that sit behind. Otherwise, you end up being, when it comes to business, a bit like a well-meaning amateur. You know, you're doing your best, but it's not really based on any sound principles or in-depth knowledge of how to run the business.
I think, yeah, there's so much of that is so relevant, and I'm just getting like quite a flurry of questions that are quite nuanced, and we have time for about 2 more. But I will say that the session, as I said before, is recorded, and we will be following up post-webinar with an EDM that will go out on Monday with this link, and it will also give you an opportunity to book a demo for Total Synergy, which I think can be quite helpful and answer a lot of these questions. But like I said, we've got time for 2 more. One being, we've got a member who currently uses Xero for reporting, but they have to transfer to a Google Sheet dashboard for forecasting and then use Asana for project management. Would Total Synergy wipe out the need for all 3 softwares?
The easy answer would be yes, but the more appropriate answer would be potentially, depending exactly sort of, how you were using that. Potentially, it is something that we do frequently. So yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Does Xero Total Synergy doesn't do the Xero bit accounting piece?
No, we integrate with Xero, probably most commonly Xero. It's quite ubiquitous at this point. So yes, I mean, it's quite frequently what we're doing is those things are being handled in separate silos. And, that is a large part of what we do. So we could potentially help someone like that, sure.
And then one more question about whether you're able to share any data regarding the cost or fees of Total Synergy versus the tangible benefits realizable by the practice, i.e. does the use of the tool provide higher levels of efficiency or improvements of the people, which in turn offers a financial benefit to a practice?
It has to, otherwise it's not worth considering, in my opinion. If looking at synergy and trialing synergy, which we do let you do, if you really can't genuinely see where we can save you billable hours, then I don't think there's anything we can help you with. It has to be justified on that basis. We have to be held to account on some form of ROI. And those calculations really can be less complex than people think. But absolutely, and that's, plenty of our clients, that is how they're basing their decision. So
I think we've got to be really careful that software is not seen as the solution to problems. If you've got a badly run practice and your systems and processes are flawed,
culture,
you don't have the right attitude to the business itself, then plugging software in, you end up blaming the software for not working, and that's not fair. It needs to happen in tandem as an improvement process in the business.
Yeah, there needs to be buy-in at multiple levels, and a desire for management and the teams to get the return out of it, and up to people like us, obviously, to prove that it can be done. So.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's all we have time for in terms of Q&A. Ray and Julian, don't know if you had any sort of closing comments. Otherwise, I will say thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for everyone who joined online. As I've said before, the recordings will be made available following this presentation, and you will be able to also access it via our YouTube channel, which is just YouTube at Oz Architects. But otherwise, thank you very, very much for joining today. And yeah, I look forward to seeing people grab a Total Synergy demo and talk to Archiviz about how to better run their practice.
Thanks, Renette.
Thanks, Renette.
See you later.
See ya.
See you.